Good afternoon. I'm Hugh Dyer, a director in our RSK Geoscience business. Welcome to the March edition of our 2026 series of Down to Earth webinars. These will cover a broad range of subjects and are available afterwards on our YouTube channel alongside our previous talks. Our talk today will be given by Rachel Hill from our Waste and Resources team within the Geosciences business. Rachel will give us an overview of the changes in regulation and legislation which could impact on waste and resource management relating to construction waste within your business. First, a brief note on housekeeping during the talk. All attendees' microphones are automatically muted throughout the webinar. During the presentation, you can post questions online, and there'll be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. We'll answer as many questions as possible at the end of the talk. Those that can't be answered due to time constraints will be answered after the webinar. Shortly after the webinar, you'll receive a link to a short survey. If you could take a few minutes to provide feedback so that we can improve our future webinars. Now, please let me introduce our speaker today. Rachel is a principal consultant leading the specialist waste and resources team within Geosciences, with over 9 years experience within the environmental and waste management sector. As a chartered resources and waste manager, Rachel works closely with our clients to understand their projects and needs and identifies ways in which they can prevent materials becoming a waste, retaining resource value through applying circular economy principles, and effectively manage their construction and excavation arisings and waste in line with best practice and regulations. I'll hand over now to Rachel to provide an overview of regulation changes upcoming in the industry.
Lovely, thanks Hugh for that. So yeah, good afternoon everyone. Yeah, my name's Rachel Hill. So today I will be having a little bit of a whistle-stop tour through the legal updates in relation to construction excavation waste, a little bit of what's happened last year, and then what we're anticipating to happen in the next couple of years as well. So yeah, we've got a few different things that we're going to go through. So waste exemption reforms, which is quite a key one around the U1 exemption changes. Landfill tax consultation outcome, which was quite a controversial one from last year. The RAP quality protocol, aggregate from inert waste, which is having a bit of a review and change through this year. The Clare Dow COP with relation to our soil and excavated material reuse and MMPs. Digital waste tracking, and then also carrier, broker, dealer reforms. I've tried to kind of indicate where these changes might apply. We know that England and Wales can be quite closely aligned, whereas Scotland and Northern Ireland can do things slightly differently. So I've tried to put alongside the titles for each where these are known to be implemented. But of course, if you're not sure, always check with your relevant regulator to gain some further clarification and advice. But yeah, we get going on to the first one. So landfill tax consultation. So there was an initial consultation last year around landfill tax and the changes that were being proposed. So one of the absolute key ones, which gained a lot of controversy, was the single rate of landfill tax by 2030. They're essentially going to phase out that lower rate and just have one standard rate, which obviously would have had huge cost implications for the industry. They're also looking at removing the qualifying fines regime and then also reforming some of the exemptions and reliefs, so the quarry filling, water discounting and dredged materials. And they were also looking to increase tax at unauthorised waste sites, obviously where there was illegal waste operations occurring. So the consultation was occurred last year, and there was a huge amount of responses from the industry, mainly opposing a lot of the changes, especially that single rate change, essentially because it was probably going to be too fast. 2030 is obviously only 4 years away now. Would have been quite a lot of market constraints, would have had a lot of impact on the market as well. Obviously a lot of a lot higher expense of disposing to landfill then, and also sustainability implications. With kind of deposit for recovery permits, etc., it might have made it a little bit more difficult to justify for those permitting operations. So the Environment Agency, the government, did listen to a lot of the pushback, and the outcome of at least the initial outcome of the consultation came out in the autumn budget last year. And it has been decided that the two rates will currently remain, but the lower rate is going to increase by the same amount as the standard rate each year now. So from April the 1st, 2026, so this year, the standard rate is going to rise from 126.15 to 130.75 per return, and then the lower rate will rise by the same amount, so it will go from 405 to 865 per tonne. So obviously that is only about £4 difference, but that is about a doubling of that lower rate. So if you are disposing of wastes to landfill under that lower rate, that is going to have some implications, and it might be something there that you need to plan for, whether there is any kind of early engagement, pre-planning to prevent that waste from going to landfill, or looking at other disposal routes that can be used. They obviously rejected moving immediately to the single rate by 2030, but what might happen in the future, we aren't too sure. The quarry filling exemption was also retained, and there is going to be a renewed compliance, focusing on improving compliance and environmental objectives. Obviously, further work is required. So this probably isn't necessarily the end of what's happening with landfill tax, but at least for now, it's not going to be as significant changes as was originally anticipated from that consultation. So these changes will come in April 2026, at least with those changes in the landfill tax. We'll see what else will come about in the future. So the next one to have a little think about is the waste exemption reforms, including those U1 waste exemption changes. So this actually came about from a consultation a few years ago now with the reforms, and then there was a subsequent consultation on exemption charges as well in 2024. And the aim of these consultations was to reduce waste crime and the abuse of waste exemptions. We know waste exemptions were pretty easy, or still are pretty easy to register, and they're not really that checked by the EA or the regulators to make sure that they are being used appropriately. And it was well known that there is a lot of instances where these were being heavily abused. I've seen it especially with those U1 exemptions, where people maybe take in more waste than they should under those exemptions, or maybe are taking in waste, actually maybe treating it and then selling it out the other end, which shouldn't occur under those exemptions. So there's a big consultation around this. And it was looking at charging for them, removal of certain exemptions, restricting other exemptions, so restricting the waste types, restricting the activities, and essentially channeling and pushing everyone to maybe use some more kind of different mechanisms, more heavily related mechanisms. So maybe it is your Clare Dalcop MMPs, or maybe it is actually permits for those operations. So from the 1st of July last year, waste exemption charges were introduced. So they've done it based on a banding system dependent on the exemption type. So obviously some exemptions are more riskier than others. Charges can range from 1,236 down to £30, so a bit of a range in there. And for example, U1 registration, so a U1 exemption registration, is about £476 now as well. So obviously this will help fund the regulation of these a little bit more, but there are some exemptions that come in. So for farmers or charities, those different operations can be exempt. So those are the changes that came in July 2025. The exemption reforms haven't yet come in. What we're anticipating those changes to look like is for the holders of those exemptions, making sure that they have really clear electronic records showing compliance with those exemptions, showing that they've only accepted the right amount of waste and the right types of waste, showing it's been appropriately classified, etc. We're also anticipating that some waste codes and descriptions will be amended in different exemptions. So again, making them a little bit more restrictive, making them have a bit more boundaries. So potentially that's then going to push to use of other mechanisms. Waste exemptions will also no longer apply on or adjacent to permitted sites. So sometimes operators were utilising exemptions to kind of enhance or grow their capabilities of their waste operations. This will no longer be applied. So where there is a permitted site with an exemption, if those operations are wanting to continue, then the permit will need to be varied. And then sites with multiple exemptions registered will only be allowed to store the minimum quantity. So rather than it being the maximum quantity or the combined quantity under those different exemptions, it will just be the minimum quantity of waste being able to be stored. So those are the changes that are due to occur. And then the big change, which is very relevant for the construction industry, excuse me, is the changes to the U1 waste exemption. So currently this is titled use of waste in construction, but it will become the use of waste to construct and maintain surfaces and barriers. So as you can see, that's already restricting what activities can be done under this exemption. They're also imposing that it's only one construction activity up to the limit specified for that construction activity can be undertaken. So it can't be multiple different activities. And it will be specified for certain types of construction as well. So tracks, footpaths, hard standing around gateways, construction site access and site preparation, mending of banks for watercourse maintenance, and flood defence bunds in there as well. So as you can see, it's becoming a lot more prescribed, a lot more restrictive. We haven't got that nice overarching of use of waste in any type of construction anymore. It will be for these activities only. And then the volumes being reduced as well. So it will only be 500 cube for each activity going forward. So a lot more restrictive than what's currently in there. And then the waste types again have been reduced as well. So we've got our 1701 series, which is our concrete, bricks, etc. Our 170302, which is our non-haz asphalt or bituminous mixtures. 170504, so our non-haz soil and stones. Non-haz dredging spoil. Our minerals only, which is the 19 code, which is typically that kind of treated material. So if you've crushed and screened a waste before, it might become that 19 code. And then also our biodegradable waste and soil and stones from more domestic operations. So this is becoming a big change for the U1 waste exemption. So if your company or your business regularly uses them, make sure you're aware of how you use them currently, whether you can then comply with what the new waste exemption looks like, or what other options you might need to be looking for to actually continue your activities. The full waste exemption of what this is going to be look like is on the EA website as well, so it is worth having a little look and a bit more of a read through of what that one will look like. We don't fully know when these changes are going to come in at the moment, but at the moment we're anticipating it's probably going to be kind of 2026. All the information is there ready to be applied. So the next change is the RAP quality protocol, so our aggregate from inert waste. So currently the EA are reviewing all 13 of the quality protocols, and the quality protocols are some really nice mechanisms which define when a waste becomes a non-waste. So if you follow the quality protocol, you can input a waste, treat it and test it in line with the quality protocol, and then if it all meets the quality protocol, it then becomes a non-waste at the end, meets that end of waste status. I really like the aggregate from inert waste QP because it is a great one for construction companies who maybe have kind of demolition waste, etc. They can put it through the quality protocol. As long as everything's followed, you can get a really nice aggregate at the end of it to be reused. This is also what if people are buying 6F5, for example, so that recycled aggregate from treatment facilities, kind of fit those big fixed facilities, this is probably what they're operating under as well. So it might impact those who are using them out on site, but it might also impact those big facility operators. So the EA are reviewing all these. They're probably going to be updated to become known as resource frameworks. The EA are really keen for waste to be known as a resource. so that it has that view of being reused instead of just being a waste and being disposed of. And it will reflect current technical standards or prevent misuse as well. They're kind of cracking down on that misuse and abuse of these different mechanisms. So it's anticipated to clarify and update the wastes that can be accepted, including removal of those where contamination could arise. So quite often when people have bought the 6F5, for example, those recycled aggregates, there can be a lot of contamination in there, might be bits of plastic, or different kind of waste that shouldn't be in there. I've seen ones with tar-bound asphalt in before, but it's essentially going to be looking to remove those wastes that could potentially lead to that contamination. So it should mean that the recycled aggregate at the end is a bit of a better quality product. And they're also going to then, in conjunction with this, introduce new contaminant limits or thresholds. So for example, those plastics or fines. So it was anticipated to be similar to the reductions in the compost quality protocol, which has been reviewed, which will probably actually be a 50% reduction. So that's quite a big reduction in those contaminant limits. So if you make recycled aggregates, that's something to be aware of, considering what wastes are being brought in to actually make those recycled aggregates. If you purchase recycled aggregates, then this might actually be quite a nice positive for you, that you're probably going to get a better quality product there. They're also going to provide clearer guidance on handling incidental materials, so things like soils, organics, or contamination that shouldn't be in there. So there'll be a nice clear guidance on what should be done in those instances. And then probably a big change as well is that they're looking for it to be integrated into PAS 402. So PAS 402 is the Waste Resource Management Reporting Standard, which is essentially a framework for the quality, traceability, data reporting and performance measurement across waste processing and recovery. So it's making sure that it is being made into alongside a standardized process, and making sure that operators who work under this quality protocol or soon to be resource framework are following a correct process. And it is anticipated under that operations will need to be audited and certified under that PAS 402 standard for them to actually be operating under the resource framework. So obviously that's something to consider if you're a big operator, or if you are undertaking this at a big fixed facility. That's something to consider within your processes, procedures. Do they align with PAS 402? And then for those who maybe are using it away from those big fixed facilities, again, do those operations align with PAS 402? Or if not, is there actually any other mechanisms such as waste exemptions, etc., which may support in doing that reprocessing and reuse on a smaller scale? So definitely something to consider, and we're anticipating that one to come in 2026. It might be a consultation or it might just come out, we're not too sure, but yeah, keep an eye out for that one in 2026. The next one is our CLARE Definition of Waste Code of Practice, so our DALCOP, which of course allows us to reuse our excavated materials in the course of construction, and relates to all our material management plans, etc. So this one has been under review for a number of years now, but there has been a bit movement on it kind of earlier this year, end of last year. It has now been confirmed that this is going to become the Soil Passport Scheme Code of Practice. We know that the Code of Practice does look at retaining materials as material and not becoming a waste. So they're trying to move away from that definition of waste kind of title and have a soil passport scheme instead. So the EA and CLARE are currently undertaking a full review of the DALCOP. It's anticipated that potentially the regulator may step back from their responsibilities regulating the scheme, but those responsibilities will then go on to others, so potentially consultants being required to undertake more checks to support regulation, and also maybe potentially on the QPs as well, so having to take a little bit more of a closer look when signing that declaration and checking everything is there. But what that is going to look like. We're not 100% sure yet. This is just, you know, some kind of high level information that potentially it will look like. But it's a good one to keep an eye on because it will have some impacts there. And there might be a little bit more closer regulation as well with the DAOCOP, or soon to be Soil Passport Scheme. So as I say, kind of dates are a little bit unknown, potentially late 2026, maybe going into 2027 for that one. The next one is around digital waste tracking. So this one has been about for a few years now. So there was a big consultation on this, I think, a few years ago, and obviously it's to change how waste movements are tracked. Currently, the legal requirement is to have those waste transfer notes or hazardous waste consignment notes, and they can be paper or electronic. But this system will cover the whole of the UK and look to actually have a digital system to record those waste movements, and it will entirely replace the paper-based system. And this is all, again, to increase that compliance, make sure that people are doing what they should do with their waste movements. So it looks to close the information gaps, improve compliance, tackle waste crime, and supporting transparency across the supply chain. So from the origin, so where the waste is being produced, to that end destination. So it'll be a really nice process. So if you are a developer on a site, you should be able to see that your waste is going to and has got to that end disposal site. So having that really nice clear tracking throughout to make sure that everything is being done compliantly, which will be a massive benefit. The data submission will be through digital API. So this essentially means that it will be integrated or can be integrated with existing waste management software. This was one of the big pushbacks when the consultation came out, was that potentially the regulators weren't necessarily seeing how the proposed system would interact with all these currently used systems. We know a lot of waste operators do have their own current digital systems. So that has been the big change now, that it will go through that API route, so hopefully can integrate nicely. There will be an annual service charge of £26, though, if you're using that. But it does mean there'll be instant digital verification of waste delivery at receiving sites. Again, that duty of care checks, that compliance will be really nice and clear now, and you can make sure that the waste is being managed as you're anticipated. There'll be better oversight of soil, aggregate, demolition and haz waste flows. So from a kind of a longer term, bigger picture regarding sustainability and circular economy, it will give the regulator, but also those who are managing waste, a better understanding of how much is going to landfill, how much is being recycled, how much is being reused, etc., which will be great for that sustainability. It will reduce the paperwork burden. So, you know, it will mean that the drivers aren't having to fill out waste transfer notes every time. It should be a lot nicer, easier system. And of course, it will strengthen that duty of care, compliance and audit trails as well. So the timelines for implementing this, so it has been staggered. Again, that was a little bit of a pushback on the consultation to make sure that it is a staggered approach so it is manageable for the industry. So in spring 2026, so this year, there is a beta phase for the receiving sites, so a testing phase for the receiving sites. In April 2026, all nations will have laid secondary legislation to mandate use as well. So this will be a legislative requirement to undertake the tracking via digital means. And then in October 2026, it will be mandatory for receiving operators to be utilising this on a day-to-day basis. And then it will come the beta phase for the waste collectors in kind of autumn 26 or spring 27. And then from October next year, it will be mandatory for waste collectors to be utilising. So from October next year, it should be fully rolled out, depending on the outcomes of those testing phases. So this will be a really big change for the industry, but it will be a really positive move forward as well, to increase that transparency. And if you do want to keep on top of what's happening with this and receive updates, there is a really nice circular economy newsletter which sends out updates from DEFRA on this one. So I do suggest signing up so you know what's happening and when changes are coming. And then the final one to run through is the carrier broker dealer reforms. So this relates to our waste carriers and our carriers licenses for transporting waste. So the existing carrier broker dealer registration system will be replaced with a permit-based system under the environmental permitting regs. So this one was consulted on in 2022 and a response a couple of years ago. So we're seeing what more comes out of that one. But the intention is that it will be a permit-based system. So similar to how big waste facilities are permitted at the moment, this will follow that same type of permitting. It obviously, again, aims to improve regulatory oversight, fight waste crime, as with a lot of these changes, and provide a risk-based approach based on activity and waste types. So that means that there will be a tiered permit system, so based on the type of wastes being carried, the volume of wastes, etc. Where there's higher risk, there will be more controls. There will be now 3 roles as well. So currently we have our upper tier and our lower tier carriers and obviously dealers, etc. But within this, there will be 3 different roles. There'll be our waste transporters, who will move waste between locations without deciding the classification or date. The waste controllers, who will be more organising collection, classification, destination, recovery or disposal. And then there'll be controller transporters, who will be combining those 2 roles. So for example, if there's like a skip company managing waste. So to some degree, this is kind of broadening those roles and broadening who will need to be permitted under this. I've also seen kind of talk that actually this will apply to consultants. So where consultants are classifying waste on someone else's behalf, that might come into that waste controller side of things. But equally, if there's a developer kind of managing that waste on site, organising collection, skip collection, etc., might come under that one as well. So this can have quite wide implications for the industry. There will be some exemptions in place, so including businesses moving small volumes of their own waste. So for example, non-haz offcuts. So if you've got subcontractors on a development site who are maybe responsible for taking away their own waste, if it's small volumes, then that may come into that. But again, there is some caveats around it being construction waste, etc., because we know that is a higher risk waste. And then the other really interesting change under this, similar to how fixed facility permits operate, is that there will be technical competence requirements. So at the moment, if you've got an environmental permit, you should have a technically competent manager coming and inspecting those operations. So under the permit-based system for the carrier broker dealers, there'll be technical competence requirements, either as individual assessment, so for those individuals undertaking the activities, or a workplace-based qualification for those undertaking the activities as well. So again, all proving that the people who are undertaking these operations know what they're doing, know the regulations, and know what they should be doing. And obviously, to aim to prevent that kind of waste crime element, there's always that classic story of someone registering their Scottie Terrier as a waste carrier, and I think the Terrier remained a waste carrier for the whole 3 years that one was active. So obviously this is all looking at tightening that up and making sure that those kind of things and loopholes aren't there anymore. But it will be a big change, will be quite an interesting one. And there will also be, alongside this, kind of compliance monitoring tools, which will be embedded in roadside checks. We know the DVLA and EA often do roadside checks and site inspections as well. And it will be under those environmental permitting regulations, there will actually be some big enforcement powers that come under this now as well. So quite a big change for the industry. There is a nice page on the EA DEFRA website about this to go through and explain everything that is being proposed if you want to have a little bit more of a look through. Currently, though, the timeframes on this are unknown, but once the new system is live, those with an existing kind of upper tier registration will be required to apply for the relevant permit when their registration's due for renewal. So it will be a bit more of a staggered approach in there. And obviously the EA will notify those people when those changes are coming in. But yeah, a real interesting one and a big change again for the industry coming up. So there we go. We've had a nice little tour of the legal happenings and changes and guidance changes from last year and what we think is coming in the next couple of years. So there's a little bit of a summary on the screen there. Obviously, some of these dates are anticipated. So my caveat in there is I've anticipated some of these ones, but you know, these things are likely to change. And again, if you're not sure, have a chat with your environmental advisor, consultant, or the regulator to see how this might impact you. But it is, of course, really key to be aware of what these changes might look like for your business. Start having a little think about what that might change your kind of day-to-day business operations, what policies, procedures might need to change, what training you might need, etc., to make sure that your business and your activities are ready for when these changes do come in. And of course, as a little reminder, the Waste and Resources team within RSK Geosciences is here for all those guidance and support. And we do a wide range of different activities for construction excavation waste. So do get in touch if you need any support. But there we go. I'll hand back over to Hugh for the Q&A, and thank you everyone for listening.
Firstly, there we are. Firstly, thank you, Rachel, for taking us through these updates and upcoming changes. That was really, really interesting. We have a number of questions coming through in the portal. So we'll just tackle some of these now. Have dates been released for the EA updates, exemptions and changes in restrictions? I think you covered some of those, but
yeah.
Where are these dates published then?
Yeah, so the charges for exemptions did come in July last year. So if you are registering an exemption, waste exemption now with the EA, then those charges are in place. For the changes in other exemptions, so we talked about them becoming more restrictive, and of course that crucial change to the U1 waste exemption. It isn't 100% certain when those ones will come in, but the EA have released full details of what those will look like. So if you have a little Google on Environment Agency waste exemption reforms, typically there's a nice clear kind of page that comes up, and then there's something called the Appendix A, which can be sometimes a little bit trickier to find, but that one outlines all the details of what those changes are for those exemptions. So it's worth having a little read. But because everything has been so clearly set out, I anticipate it being reasonably kind of quick, maybe within the next year or so, that those changes will come in. So it's a good one to be prepared for, as with that U1 changing, it will definitely push people to be using other mechanisms now.
Superb, thank you. You mentioned in relation to aggregates the introduction of PAS 402. Is this likely to significantly impact on the reuse of aggregates, either positively or negatively?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think for the people purchasing recycled aggregates, it's probably going to have a nice positive change, because it will be ensuring that those recycled aggregates have been made in line with that policy and protocol. So they probably get like a nice kind of cleaner aggregate, a better quality aggregate, to make sure that, you know, there's maybe those people who aren't quite doing what they should do at the moment. So this should kind of cut down on that a lot more. For those producing the aggregates, it might be a little bit more onerous to begin with. So if there's a big facility producing this, and they're looking to get that PAS 402 certification, then there obviously is a little bit of a process to do that, is what's anticipated at the moment. So, you know, making sure policies, procedures align with that, and can be proven that that is being undertaken and aligned with. For those who maybe do it on a little bit more of an ad hoc basis, so, you know, kind of construction development sometimes use this process, it might be a little bit more trickier now, obviously, to get that PAS 402 certification. So it's kind of going to see what that essentially looks like, to whether that might be suitable for those operations, and whether those developers can comply with that within their current kind of processes and procedures. Obviously, if they can do it, it's still a great process to go through and have that product at the end. It's nice for sustainability, nice for circular economy. But if it's something that they can't quite comply with, then looking at those maybe waste exemption options might be a better way of doing it. So it will remain a waste, but for small scale, it might be a bit of a better way of applying that then and getting still to that reuse end goal.
Okay, no, that's brilliant. Thank you. Our next question: under the proposed Clare Soil Passport scheme, is there likely to be a challenge for consultants being asked to act as a regulator for their clients on schemes? And would independent oversight be more appropriate?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, at the moment, we don't fully know what this will look like and what that kind of change will look like under the DALCOP and the Soil Passport scheme. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting one to see what will come out of that. I mean, without further detail, we probably can't comment too much on what it will look like. But yeah, it will definitely be a bit of a shake up to the system. I think at the moment, consultants can have varying degrees. I know within RSK, we can support writing the MMPs, and it's then over to the client to help to be implementing that, or we can support throughout the process, making sure things are being checked and doing those inspections while it's being implemented. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see what the kind of requirements are within that, but yeah, we will see when it comes out and what changes those are looking like.
Yes, yeah, that'll be very interesting, I think. Next question: how will technical competency be applied to large companies, and will there need to be specific people related to each site where a company has lots of separate sites?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and this is one that I've been thinking about myself as well. I know that RSK has carrier licenses, and then equally we undertake waste classification for clients as well. So yeah, what that looks like, I think there hasn't been like a lot of detail released at the moment on it. There is a nice page on the EA website that talks about what these changes might look like. But yeah, that's definitely one of the questions that I still have of how will that apply. It's nice and simple when you've got a small company, but when you've got a big company doing a lot of these different activities, acting as carriers, acting as potentially waste controllers under the new terminology, yeah, what that technical competence is going to look like will be quite an interesting one. So I haven't got a clear answer, but I definitely keep an eye on that EA website and see once more information comes out.
And a related question was, can that technical competency be passed to an external team?
Yeah, again, it's a good question, really. I think we don't have the answers to it yet until we get that more information. I would have thought, though, if someone is being classified as that waste controller, waste transporter, etc., they may well need to be the ones with that technical competence to be able to actually gain that permit then. But yeah, we'll wait and see what that one looks like when there's some more information that comes out.
Brilliant. And a quick last question. Which of these changes is likely to have the biggest impact on the industry? That's a very open question.
It is. I think it's going to be really variable, to be honest. It's going to depend what a company's and businesses' operations are, what activities they're going to do. I think digital waste tracking is probably going to be quite a big one. That's going to impact everyone to a degree, both needing to make sure that it's being tracked properly, making sure that there's a good system in place. But equally that it's going to be a really nice positive for those people who are wanting to check that their waste is being managed compliantly, that they have that absolute transparency from start to end. And I think at the moment that is where we see a lot of potential issues for clients, is where they don't necessarily have that transparency. So they're sending their waste off site, or they're trusting that someone is taking that waste and taking it to where it should go. And then sometimes it doesn't always happen. But they don't know that. They don't see that until they get the regulator coming and saying, where's your waste gone? can you prove where it's gone to? So I think having that transparency and knowing that waste is being managed correctly is going to be a big change for the industry and a real big positive move forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you to everyone for your questions and interaction. We'll end the questions there, and the further questions that we've had in will be answered once Rachel's had a chance to review these and breathe. Our next Down to Earth talk will be on Tuesday, the 14th of April, and we'll outline the updates to the earthworks specification outlined within the Series 600 of the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges. Please remember to complete the feedback following the presentation, and thank you for attending today, and we'll see you all again in April.
Thank you, everyone.